Welcome to Commerce Talks, episode number 58. Today my guest is Richard McKenzie, Chief Commercial Officer from Ocado Solutions. We are talking about the grocery delivery business in UK and in the world. Ocado Solutions is now helping many other retailers, not only Ocado, to actually get to a high level of grocery delivery. Most of the German customers could learn how not to do it with the Rewe delivery solutions, the Rewe online shop. And we are talking with Richard about the challenges of building such a solution, why it is so important to own such a solution, why Ocado is so many years ahead, and what kind of companies are integrating it right now. And the solution itself is not just software, it's services, logistics, and all the other stuff that comes with it. So it's a very interesting episode for all the people that are working in the grocery business, in the grocery delivery business. And of course, we are talking about Gorillas, Getir, and the others, and discuss how their place will look like in 5 to 10 years from now. So enjoy the episode with Richard McKenzie. Richard, welcome to the Commerce Talks podcast, maybe also to the Kassenzone podcast. Depends a little bit how it goes today. We are talking about Ocado, one of the most admired business models on the European continent, especially when you're looking to it from a grocery retailer perspective. Today, we're going to discuss actually why the UK market, especially due to Ocado, is so much advanced compared to other European markets. How do you still take care to grow, even like on the very high basis you have achieved already? What kind of challenges you had to solve during COVID, and many other stuff like your software business, the solution business, we will try to tap into. So welcome to our podcast. And now the word's over to you. Please introduce yourself and tell us the truth, and maybe give some background about Ocado.
Look, thank you. It's actually genuine. I really like talking about Ocado. I'm going to start here. So it is genuinely a pleasure to be here. The story and the business model is, for my mind, fascinating. I've been here 2 years. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer of Ocado Solutions. That's, as you were putting it, the software business, although it goes a lot broader than software. You know, we're the guys who take our platform and work with partners internationally, trying to make them successful. So for us, it's the beginning of a journey. We've been successful in the UK, but our journey now is kind of with our 10 partners and hopefully many more to come.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit more about Ocado for the ones that don't know the brand and the services Ocado is offering? So usually we're describing it's groceries online, but then depending on what country you're living in, you have a very different picture about the grocery assortment there.
Yeah, of course. So Ocado started 21 years ago now. And it was 3 guys, and they had who were working together at Goldman Sachs at the time. And they had an idea that they just wanted to build a great online grocer. And it was quite a simple insight, which is if you take the store out of the way, you can deliver groceries to a customer pretty efficiently, because stores are never really designed to be a fulfillment method. Now, they started that journey and they worked extremely hard buying third-party kit, buying third-party bits of software, trying to stitch it together to create that compelling offer. And what became more and more apparent over time was you couldn't actually go and buy the kit to make this work. Or rather, it was extremely difficult to buy the kit. Most software was designed for non-food. And most of the warehouse equipment really wasn't designed for doing the single pick and fulfilling e-commerce grocery orders efficiently. So there was a 15-year journey from that where Ocado started to develop its own technology. And as it developed its own technology, the proposition to the British consumer got better and better. So Ocado's always said, what are the most important things to a customer? Well, it's that you get what you order. A grocery basket's very complicated. You know, it's multiple items, it's chilled items, ambient items, frozen items. You get what they order, they come in good quality. and we're going to make sure we offer a wider range than you can offer in any supermarket. And essentially, by the time you've got efficient fulfillment, which is highly accurate, and the widest range and fresh product, you've got something that's winning in the market. And the system was designed to be able to do that efficiently. And we went through this journey where we built that equipment, and we ended up with something which we now call Ocado Smart Platform, which essentially is an end-to-end platform for grocery e-commerce. And that's now what powers our 10 partners internationally. And actually, that's how we've transformed ourselves now, because the grocery business, the Ocado.com, is now a joint venture with Marks and Spencer's. And actually, the majority of the business is now in our platform business, which is called Ocado Solutions. And that's actually the biggest bit, and by far the biggest bit in terms of valuation of Ocado. So we have those two distinct businesses, the original pure play grocery online, and then the solutions business around which is effectively partnering using our technology.
And the grocery business online, that is like roughly £2 billion annually, or now growing to like, I don't know, two and a half billion.
Exactly. It's getting on a bit. It's a bit more than 2 billion now.
Okay, and you're saying the solutions business is already like the bigger part of it. We will talk about what kind of solutions you're offering. And you said it's 10 partners. Does it mean it's 10 customers are using the Ocado platform, or what is a partner in your?
So in my mind, Ocado.com is one of our partners. So that's which is just the original one. So the model we follow is we charge fees to Ocado.com in the same way, and which, as it's a joint venture, it has to be done at an arm's length basis. And in the same way, we charge fees to Casino in France, to Sobeys in Canada, and so on. So we've got 10 of these retail partners, which are typically very big retailers in some of the larger markets around the world.
And those retailers, do you have retailers in Germany too that are using the platform yet?
Not yet.
Okay. And those retailers are using what exactly? Only a software part, or are you building fulfillment centers, or is there like picking devices you're selling to them? So what is included in the solutions offering?
So it's quite important from an Ocado point of view. We really strongly believe in the end-to-end nature of the system and the end-to-end nature of the platform. And just to give you a little example, if you order your tomatoes, you want to know that when you click that you want these particular type of tomatoes, you want to know that, one, they're fresh, and two, that they'll actually turn up on your doorstep. We can do that, we believe, better than anybody else, because we know exactly what's in the warehouse at the time your order is going to be delivered. So it's super important for us that the front end can talk to the fulfillment, and then it's super important that we know exactly where the vans are and then they can be routed to make sure that it's being delivered on time to you. So all of our partners are taking an integrated solution. Now, they're doing it in slightly different ways, but all of them are taking fulfillment, last mile, and we've actually got this integrated model where you've got this highly accurate fulfillment in the highly accurate and highly efficient fulfillment in the middle, which powers everything end to end. And actually, for us, that's really important. So when I talk about taking our last partner, who we just signed recently in Spain, Alcampo, they will be migrating their front end onto OSP. They'll be building a CFC in Madrid, and then their vans will be routed by OSP as well. At the same time, for the parts of Spain that can't be served from the CFC, they'll be converting their in-store fulfillment to OSP in-store fulfillment. So it really is it's an end-to-end platform that we're offering.
Okay, got it. So, but then I want to ask you a question. So I understand that those partners usually don't have the capacity to build it on their own, or it's too late, too expensive, whatever, because they would have to replicate the whole, thousands and thousands of man days in software development and and replicate the learning curve. But and those partners now, for example, Acampo, will differentiate their offering for the customer now with your technology being better than whatever other partner there is in other supermarket there is in Spain, being better in the online experience, being better in predicting what's in the warehouse or in the stores for the market that are still serving as fulfillment centers where my cars are. Is it working that way that only like one grocer per market should use then your approach? Because if like 2 or 3 are doing it, where's the differentiation?
So look, we've always ended up in a place in most of our markets where we've ended up mutually exclusive. So there are obviously a couple of exceptions. That in the UK we work with Morrisons and Ocado.com. Actually in Spain we work with a regional grocer, Bonpro, as well as working with Alcampo. So there are some exceptions to that. Once we've never actually gone into our negotiations planning to be exclusive, but our partners have seen us as a route to competitive advantage. So we've ended up with, and it's fairly public, in a position where, assuming our partners hit certain targets in terms of growth, and using our equipment and our platform, we're prepared to stay exclusive with them, because exactly as you say, they're seeing this as part of their competitive advantage.
Okay. And how do you evaluate then all the new delivery initiatives we see now in Europe and in the US, especially those in Germany, we call them ultra fast delivery services, Gorillas, Getir, Flink, Wheezy, and others. So is that something you can see in the future could be connected to your platform too? Because then I don't know, a Gorillas fulfillment, whatever, picks from an Acampo store in Spain, delivers like in 10 minutes. Whereas like your service, if I understand it correctly, still is like order today, get it delivered tomorrow kind of approach.
So there's a few things under that question. So let me kind of take a few of them in order. So our vision is to create the best online platform to serve grocery retailers. So within that, we absolutely are developing, and we've got a business called Zoom in London, which you may know about, which delivers within 1 hour. So within that, we are absolutely delivering capabilities to serve immediacy, and we do think that is going to be part of the market. Now, I think you started with kind of what do I think of it. I see, if you think of how grocery developed as a whole, it kind of started when supermarkets developed and then hypermarkets developed. And over time, actually, offline retail started to segment, and eventually you got convenience stores. Convenience stores charged a premium for being convenient, just as they said on the tin, but they were always about, depending on the market, say maybe 10% of the market. And what was the trade-off there? Well, they had a higher price, but they were close. They had a narrower range, but they were close to you, and they were typically open longer hours, and they charged you that price premium. In the UK, it was around 5% for doing that. If you now look at these, we call them Q-commerce players. If you look at these Q-commerce players, they're actually offering an extremely narrow range. So you're talking of hundreds of SKUs, whereas Ocado.com is offering 40,000 plus. Most of our partners are using our equipment to offer the widest range in the market. And then they're offering a very narrow range, and they're asking a very, very high price premium. So we did some benchmarks in London, which I think are pretty representative. And if you looked across the Gorillas, Getirs in London, we think they're probably charging a price premium of about 20-30%. So you've got this thing which is narrow range, high price premium. Now, if you look at if you then take the parallel to the offline market, that says actually you're going to be pretty niche. Now, can that be quite a good niche? Can that be quite a profitable niche? Maybe, absolutely. But I think in our mind, you're never going to be replacing the bulk of the grocery market, which has always been about range, price, and accuracy. So to our mind, that's super important. There's one thing I do want to just pick up, as you said our platform is typically used for next day delivery. There's actually nothing in our platform that stops us doing same day delivery. It's actually typically in the UK, we just don't reserve slots, and typically the slots are sold out. But that's more of a decision we choose to make, that the slots are not reserved, so you can do same day delivery. It absolutely can be done in the same day through our platform. But just going back, to my mind, the Q-commerce, very interesting model, but likely to be to my mind, quite a small part of the overall online grocery market.
Okay, I believe that. So, and I share your concerns here. But like when you're in their investor decks, they're describing themselves obviously not as a Q-commerce player in the future, but rather logistics network. Say, okay, they're going to start with like grocery delivery, but by building more capabilities and building better connections to, I don't know, pharmacies, drugstores, whatever, they will be able to deliver whatever you want to get delivered within 10 minutes or 50 minutes. I think is a threshold in Berlin right now. Some are able to do it like within 5 or 6 minutes in the optimal cases. And I would understand your business that it also can develop into a logistics network, so much more than just delivering groceries. If you have all these vans around, then obviously other retailers or other vendors would like to use this logistics infrastructure, though eventually there is kind of a competition on the horizon. It's not there yet, and yes, it's a niche, and yes, it's not vans but bikes. But I still see an overlap, and it's very hard to come to a common conclusion here, because there's definitely very intense discussions, obviously also in London, not just in Berlin. That's why I wanted to get your view from like a today's perspective.
Yeah, and as I said, our vision is to create the best platform for grocery retailers, and absolutely, that will include the ability to do immediate delivery. At the moment, that's being done through this Zoom facility in the UK. That offers you about 10,000 SKUs. It's a much lower price premium than what I've been talking about there. So it's a highly competitive price. And the average delivery time is about 40 minutes. So to our mind, that's done very well. That's if you actually look at the share in the catchment it's operating in London, that's doing extremely well. Now, could you see that extending into other services in the future, as you're suggesting? Absolutely. I certainly wouldn't rule that out. I just would go back to what's been the dominant model in grocery for the last 50 years. It's always been the ability to offer the full shop, and that's also been where the profit is. And large-scale distribution centres, such as our CFCs, are by far the most efficient, bar none, way of fulfilling those orders. And then the ability to get a van that drops 20 large orders is again by far the most efficient way of doing that last mile. So for us, that is the winning economic model.
Okay, the way you're describing Q-commerce as a niche, maybe a good and profitable niche, most brick and mortar retail managers would describe online groceries as a niche. They say, yes, it's coming. Yeah, we are seeing it since years, and we saw Ocado in UK, and we saw Rewe online in Germany. But I don't believe it's going to hit like 10% or more. And there's we should definitely focus on the in-store experience, which will be even like in 10 years from now more than 80% of the market. And because of that, I don't need to invest into solutions like yours or in other solutions. So what is your take on the threshold of online grocery on the online grocery market, especially like from your perspective? Because in the European Union, I think the UK is by far the most advanced market when it comes to online grocery. From a German perspective, I think we're still below 2% from the overall market. So what do you answer those managers?
Well, the first thing I'd say is you would have got the same answer 15 years ago in the UK, and it was clearly would have been the wrong call. And I think what COVID has done, it's shown that most people, and if you look at the surveys, most people have trialed online e-commerce for grocery during COVID. So it's clearly the case that most people are willing to give it a go. And the surveys are also saying that the majority of people will continue to have that as part of their repertoire. So there clearly has been a shift in online behavior and attitudes towards online during COVID. The story, I believe, is that this has been a market that has been supply constrained for years. And if you look at, I find the US instructive, because up until the point when Amazon bought Whole Foods, the US market share looked a bit like Germany now. Actually, it was pretty low. And the reason for that was that no major grocer was really investing in it, and was really trying to offer the customers that great proposition. When Amazon bought Whole Foods, you actually ended up with a significant degree of investment being made. And that was the turning point in the market. And if you look at it now, you've got major grocers in the US talking publicly that they think you'll get 20% of the market going online. And this is in kind of 5-10 years time. We're talking, in our meaningful lifetimes, in the working lifetimes of these managers. And if you look at the investment, the Kroger are making with us, they're making significant investments to go and win in this marketplace. This is not a little niche that they're going after. And as I say, you go back to pre-Amazon Whole Foods, actually the numbers look pretty like Germany. Actually, there's been a divergence since then. Look at the UK. The UK post-COVID is still probably running at about 13-14% online. You then, and I know the markets are different for different reasons, but you've got sensible projections in Asia where people are talking about China getting to 50% online. South Korea is running at over 25%, 26% online currently. Now, China is probably higher because offline retail was pretty awful beforehand, and therefore kind of customers have shifted more easily. Korea has always been keener to adopt tech. But those are numbers where people, that 25% in Korea is a number that is still growing rapidly. That's not something where you're seeing a ceiling. So our view is if you can crack it and you can get the proposition that works for a customer, and I'll go back to, getting excellent fresh product, getting it to the doorstep in a way that's accurate. It comes on time. The delivery price is reasonable, and the pricing of the product is good. There's no fundamental barrier to why people are not going to want this service that's fundamentally more convenient.
Okay, yeah, got it. I believe it. So I think it's a good ballpark to say 5 to 10 years to get to a decent 10 to 20%. But do you have any prediction for the infrastructure, or for the let's say the infrastructure of brick and mortar retailers? Because today they own 100% of the market in Germany, more or less, 98%, and they need all this revenue actually to pay the rent and to pay the personnel, and actually to explain that they have so many stores. So in the UK market, have you seen then smaller stores, or were stores closed on the brick and mortar side? So how will it play out on the brick and mortar side when online will be responsible for 10, 12, 30% of the overall grocery revenue?
So you clearly have seen a slowdown and in places a reversal in terms of store rollouts, and you've seen some of the players in the market not opening stores where they've got as far as starting to fit out the stores, and they're just starting to see the demand tailing off. I think you will continue to see that. I think you'll see, some of the larger stores actually you can turn into reasonable scale distribution centers. So I think there is the potential to repurpose some of that. There is the potential to actually downsize the stores, and you've actually started to see some of the space getting shared with non-food retail. I think the kind of important thing, though, is for retailers not to kid themselves that somehow by ignoring the costs of doing online out of a store, that's the right way of doing it. So quite a lot of offline retailers still are thinking about it as marginal cost, that somehow the rent is not real, somehow the labor for putting the product onto the shelf, they might count the picking, but the labor for putting the product onto the shelf is not real because they're kind of doing it anyway. And they get themselves into a bit of a fallacy of thinking, oh, well, that makes it not too bad, and we can defer future investment. But as you move from 2, 3, 4, 5% of your sales going through this channel to 10, 15%, that becomes a serious economic problem, because actually that 10, 15% is not bearing the cost burden. And what you're finding in a lot of cases is that 10, 15% is being driven by professional pickers driving around the store, and that's pissing off the customers who are walking around the store. So you can get to a vicious circle where the in-store experience deteriorates because you've got too much online getting driven through the store.
Would that also be like your explanation for the rather low takeoff of the Rewe online shop experience? Because they have been like the innovator in the market since 2012, but it never really scaled. So the first years they really did a whole lot of the revenue driven by coupons. Mm-hmm. So get the first 20 euros free on your 100 euro order. And they used stores as a fulfillment center. Now I think in Cologne, they've opened like one central warehouse. But would you say that using the stores too long as fulfillment centers is one of the main mistakes those retailers are doing when they go online?
Look, I don't know the case of Rewe very well, also. I make no comment on anybody specifically. When you're using in-store fulfillment, it's super difficult to get anything like the accuracy levels that you do from centralized distribution. And it's because you're competing with real customers. So, you put in your order for tomatoes. Actually, the system has no idea whether a customer is going to be picking those tomatoes before you. So unless you somehow find a way of reserving stock, or moving it into a dark store at the back, which then starts to partition inventory and make the give you even worse scale disadvantages. It's very, very difficult to do that. It's to get that pick accuracy that's important. So it's very common that, every basket that gets delivered to a customer from in-store fulfillment has an error in it. And it doesn't take long before a customer just goes, this isn't worth it. I wanted this for convenience, but the convenience aspect's gone, because every time my plastic bags arrive, there's a problem with them. And
I agree also, like from my personal shopping experience. So even though like from a statistic view, it's only like, let's say, 1 out of like 20 items is wrong. And like the fulfiller, Rewe in this case, would say that's cool. 19 are correct, but your service level expectations from online are so high that you usually don't accept like this one wrong yogurt or wrong tomato or whatever.
But 1 out of 20 items is pretty. An average basket in the UK is 50 items.
50.
50 or just under 50. That's 1 in 20. You're pretty much guaranteed there's an error in every basket. So that is, you don't get a perfect order. And that's the problem with this. And what we find is that, by the time a customer has shopped 3 times with us, they become very loyal. And we've got some public statistics out there on our loyalty, and it's amazing the loyalty that Ocado.com gets. you just don't get the same effect out of in-store fulfillment, because you just get the customer just doesn't get the same service level.
Yeah, got it. So, and there's one thing I was interested with this interview in particular, because I only read it in media. So during the time of COVID, there must have been like peak demand for your services, as many retailers closed doors, or it was limited capacity in store. And I've read that during peak demand, you limited the basket size, so more people could order, and not like one person in the street ordered like for everybody in the street. Is this true, or is it a myth?
It's absolutely right. So, COVID was unprecedented for online retail for many levels. And I'd forgotten the exact statistics, but there was a point at which the Prime Minister said during lockdown, if at all possible, buy your groceries from an online supermarket. And we could have sold out weeks of our capacity in the hour that followed that. The demand was absolute. So during that time, we did have to take some measures that, frankly, you would never imagine to take. So, we spent years trying to get people into our shop. Inconceivably, we had to shut our shop to new customers. So we had to limit the basket. We had to limit the maximum basket size. And what you were finding actually is people editing the basket. Actually, you were just you couldn't fit all of the product onto a van, just because the basket was getting edited and to become so high. And we also took a decision that everybody has a tap in their home, so we were going to stop selling water, because we wanted to make sure that kind of groceries people needed would get out there. And those are just things if you think of the economics, you need to make an online grocery business work. You want big basket sizes. That's how you make the last mile pay. The idea that we were going to limit basket sizes is absolutely incredible, but that's what we did to make sure we could serve as many customers as possible. But sadly, we still had to, we were still in a place where we were rationing slots, and people were celebrating on Twitter when they got themselves an Ocado slot.
Is it still the case sometimes, or have you managed it that everybody who wants to order now gets a slot?
No, so we're back now in kind of growth mode. So actually, since that time, we've now opened another 3 CFCs in the UK. So actually now we're back on growth mode. Those CFCs are ramping extremely well. So actually, our capacity in the UK is now significantly above where it was 18 months ago.
So CFC stands for Central Fulfillment Center?
Customer Fulfillment Center, yeah. These are the robotic warehouses that you'll recognize from YouTube.
And how many households do you need actually to have like a productive modus in such a CFC? I'm asking this because we have this number like from the picnic business case, and they're around like 5,000 households they would need in the picnic business to have an operationally successful business for fulfillment center. I guess with your robotic CFCs, it's more households you would need, right?
So it depends. So we talk about a standard CFC. So when you kind of talk to analysts, they'll talk about a standard CFC, which is around kind of 400 million pounds in sales, slightly more. Now, they can scale down significantly. So we've got ones that are under a third of that. They can also scale up significantly. So actually the one in Erith in West London is probably over 3 times that size, in terms of its total capacity. So there is a very wide range. And frankly, kind of what we always do when we try and plan a network in the UK or with any of our partners is match the size of the distribution center to the size of the city. So, in Bristol, we're serving a city that is, in total, something like, I'll have to check the numbers after this call, but something like 400,000 people. It's not a big city, that is being served by that distribution center.
So what is the average like turnover from a brick and mortar supermarket in the UK? I just want to understand. So how many supermarkets are you not replacing? That's the wrong word, obviously, but what is the capacity like in supermarket terms?
I'm going to have to I can't remember the exact number. So Kroger, who are ordering something like the standard facilities I referred to, in the way they talk about this, have been talking about that being equivalent to 20 of their large stores. So
okay, but that's US.
That's in the US.
Yes,
so it'd be
US,
slightly. Yeah. So an average UK one would be a bit more than that.
An average UK supermarket would be more.
So it would be smaller. Would be smaller than that. So it'd be replacing, in your word.
Yeah. Because I heard I get a number from like an Edeka Rewe kind of thing is like 2 to 3 million max. So because it's like then depending what size we are talking, it's like replacing 100, 200.
Yeah.
Stores,
exactly.
Which is a lot.
But I think it's important to emphasize, we scale down to, as I say, kind of a third of that number. We scale up significantly as well. So what we don't do is not a one size fits all. No. We work on a modular basis, and actually we charge our partners for the capacity they draw down, not for the end capacity of the distribution center. No. So it is not the case that that standard is what we put into every city. Actually, we build them to the needs of that city.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Here on Google, they say Bristol population is 470,000.
Okay. I wasn't far off.
No, ballpark was correct. So I would have like many more questions about the business. So I guess we're gonna record like a second episode if possible.
If you'll have me again, I'm delighted.
Yeah, but we both have hard stop here. So it's super interesting to get your understanding where the ceiling might be in online grocery. So my opinion is there is no ceiling. So it's
we agree on that one. The main thing is getting a model that works.
Yeah. We see some more global adoption for online grocery, mainly driven due to the COVID effects. Now, even the retailers that never touched like online as a channel, like grocery retailers, are now looking into solutions. And we're going to see more and more like Ocado cases worldwide, where like Ocado Solutions is like driving the business behind an Alcampo or Kroger's in the US.
Absolutely, and beyond that, we don't really see limit to the opportunity. Grocery is half of the retail market, and we've got half of the retail market to go after.
Grocery is half of the retail market. So if you like grocery all categories together,
grocery, if you take it globally, is about 40. I'm going to hedge on my numbers. 40 to 45% of retail worldwide.
Maybe not in Germany because people don't spend too much on grocery, but maybe for the UK.
That's it's globally, and actually, the more developed the market is, a slightly lower proportion. Okay. But it is globally, it's 40+% of the market. So we really don't see limit to the opportunity
within our expected managers' lifetimes. There's it's going to be a growth market, I guess. So.
It's certainly beyond my lifetime.
Okay, Richard, thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Speak to you soon.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please don't forget to rate this episode on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever tool you're using to listen to podcast. And tune in again next week.